Autistic children is the subject for Key Adams, sitting in for Esther in 25 minutes. First on BBC Two, go on, have a snoop through the keyhole.
Thank you. Hello and welcome to Through the Keyhole, the show that practices entryism in the nicest possible way. As always, we borrowed the keys to two fascinating homes, belonging to two well-known personalities, and with the help of the sainted Lloyd Grossman, we'll be taking a privileged peep behind closed doors. But the question is, whose? Well, to try and answer that question, we have a panel of perfection behind the desk of distinction. Our first panelist was voted at school as the girl most likely to. She recently did a wide-ranging investigation into the beauty business and discovered a Swiss doctor with a remarkable system of weight reduction through surgery. He removes every major bone in your body. Not only do you weigh less, you look much more relaxed than before. Ms. Nina Mishkov. As someone who didn't pass his test until he was 28, our second panelist confesses to being the world's worst driver. But he's terribly unapologetic about it. He says, if people don't like the way I drive, they should get off the pavement. Mr. Paul Ross. Our third panelist was just telling me she's developed a slight impediment in her speech. She stops to breathe. As she once said to me, if other people insist on joining in, conversation becomes impossible. Miss Lorraine James. Let me tell you a little bit about the game. With the aid of our magic keys, we'll be taking a careful look inside two fascinating homes. And that should tell us something, maybe quite a bit, about the person or persons that live there. All our friends here have got to do is try and work out who that is. So let's join Lloyd right now at house number 1 and watch closely, because remember, the clues are there as we go through the keyhole.
In this house, you come through one door to be immediately confronted by another, and there it is. It's a stage door, and Mary Lloyd, one of the early stars of the music hall, is standing by it. So this person loves the stage and loves performing. It's also quite clear that we're in the home of a family of collectors. You can see they collect plates commemorating everything, including the opening of the Channel Tunnel. You can also see that this person likes the railways. So we're dealing with a steam enthusiast. And a steam enthusiast who's rather meticulous. He collects weights and measures. So it shows a very scientific turn of mind around here. There's plenty of scientific reading here. In the bookcase, there are works by Rutherford, Marconi, and Nansen. So maybe someone around here is planning to become a Nobel laureate himself. There's certainly a love of literature in this household. Here's an extract from Ralph Waldo Emerson's writings, which says that it's desirable to laugh often and love much, to win the respect of intelligent persons and the affection of children. Well, those aren't bad watchwords to live by. Now, you can tell that someone around here has had some sort of connection with the forces. We have naval coats of arms here, RAF coats of arms, and someone's been cruising. Well, here's the living proof that these people are real dog lovers. In fact, they're so keen on dogs, they've even got the pictures on the wall to prove it. Now, when you look around here, you can tell that these folk are enthusiastic Northerners. They may be slightly confused because although the pictures on the wall are pure Yorkshire, the reading matter is Lancastrian. There's a very strong urge to collect around this household. Here's a whole series of miniature tea sets, and they show that traveling is quite high up on the agenda here. They've got tea sets from Spain and China and Lord knows where else. There's also quite a lot of cruiserbilia around here. So once again, cruising is quite an important activity. They're also actually rather academic. There are lots of books here, and there's an interesting conjunction of jokes and jazz. This is a very swish bedroom, and it's full of film star glamour. Just look at the lights over the mirrors. It's ideal for putting on your slap before going out and performing. And you can also tell that someone in this household loves traveling to the States. Now, in the drawing room, we saw that they read about jazz around here. Well, you know what? They also play it. Let's look at the evidence. The love of vaudeville, the northern reading, the jazz and jokes. Who lives in a house like this? David, it's over to you.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Lloyd. And now for our home and studio audience, though not for our panel, here's whose house it is. Okay, Nina, what do you think?
Well, there was a very nice feeling about the house. Perhaps that was the rather tubby Labrador. I love the Labrador. But it's a nice mix of people who travel a lot and people perhaps who perform. I don't know.
All right. Well, Paul has spotted a couple of brilliant clues.
Well, I was very intrigued by the science books. I wonder whether it was somebody who had a teaching background, possibly, or but also he had two, well, certainly one of my comedy heroes, Max Miller, and also Murray Lloyd. So it's somebody I imagine maybe was a teacher who's been a stand-up comedian or something of some sort.
Lorraine, it's over to you.
The Lancashire thing, obviously, was...
And also trains. Trains, was that a train station or something?
Our audience are ahead of me there. I don't know the link with the trains.
Is there a... it's somebody who obviously appears on television.
Ah. Well done, yes. The two things that Paul mentioned, very much part of his background.
Is it somebody who presents a show rather than who acts? Is it like a game show?
Is this... Actually, is numbers adding up to do with it, like possibly dart scores?
It's Jim Bowen.
Jim Bowen it is, yes. And Jim Bowen is, in fact, at this moment overseas, so he's not here, obviously, but the tireless Lloyd, he tracked him down, and this is what transpired.
Jim, your career in entertainment really started with the comedians in the early 70s. Yeah. What about today's comedy? How do you feel about this whole renaissance of comedy?
Is that the word you're looking for, a renaissance?
Well, it depends what you think.
I think it's a regression, quite honestly.
Why?
Well, because I think comedy, it's either funny or it's not. I don't think we need to academise or intellectualise about comedy. And we've got this politically correct syndrome has come in, I think, far too strongly, because it's inhibiting comedy. And it's heightening awareness of problems which we know are there. I think it would be far better if we laid back a bit and just had a smile at them and take the edge off them a little bit, without invalidating the situation.
You had a very successful career as a teacher. You became a deputy head. Were you regarded as a really fun guy to have around by the students?
I was very strict, but I like to think I was fair, and I think I was funny. I used to have a laugh with them, you know. It's a great lubricant to life, is laughter, isn't it? Ask Ken Dodd.
Out of your 3 careers as a teacher, a comedian, and a jazz musician, which has given you the most fulfillment, do you think?
Well, financially, obviously, the comedy and Bullseye, the game show, was a pool's win. We can't deny that. But purely from an enjoyment standpoint, the jazz, playing with nice guys, playing Dixieland jazz is wonderful to me. I just wish I could play better.
Jim, the last time I visited you at home, you were living in a converted railway station. Now you're living in a converted mill. What is it about you and eccentric houses?
Well, I think the station was a lovely property, as you remember, but it was very much isolated. And we enjoyed converting it. It took us 17 years. And now it's gone, sadly, out of our lives. But now we've come here on the edge of a, as you say, a converted mill. And this affords us a little more security. If we go away for longer periods of time, we're on the edge of a settlement, if you like. So there's been a good reason for both eccentric moves, yeah.
Jim, I'd love to give you a Through the Keyhole key as a memento of this visit. I don't have one with me there, so I'll have to put it in the post.
Okay, that's fine, thanks. And thanks for coming. And will you tell David when you see him, I'd like you to thank him for making me realise that money isn't everything.
Jim Bowen there, ladies and gentlemen. Our thanks to Jim Bowen.
Well, this is a lovely broad hall with nice proportions. And the first thing you see when you come into it is not a bit of England, but a bit of the Middle East. This table, which comes from Syria, very elaborately inlaid with marquetry. You can also tell immediately that this is quite a sort of studious family, very interested in history, adventure, and business, because we've got books on applied economics and Mount Everest and the Boer War all together in that bookcase. They're also very keen on archaeology. Look at this, the archaeology of Mesopotamia, ancient Iraq, the antiquities of Jordan, of the Chaldees. So they're very interested in the past and particularly interested in the Middle East. There also would appear to be some sort of South African connection, judging by this picture. I feel that this house is lived in by a family of enthusiasts. They're passionate about all sorts of things, and they don't attempt to disguise those passions at all. A very strong interest is obviously South Africa. Here's a watercolor of a splendid South African landscape, and there's another South African picture over here. Now, the Middle East is a consistently important theme. Look at this bit of old pot scavenged from the desert in Iraq. It's a few thousand years old. And you can see from the books here that adventure and the Middle East are very important to this family. I think they're travelers, they're wanderers, and a room like this with its big, wide open spaces is absolutely ideal for them. The colors of this kitchen are very Dutch. But there's no doubt to me that the inspiration for the cooking is rather French. There's a very mouth-watering photograph there of a market stall for the vegetables taken somewhere in France. Now, you can always tell how enthusiastic cooks are by what sort of oil and vinegar they've got. Well, look at this. Tarragon vinegar, raspberry vinegar, walnut oil. So food is pretty important around here. We're dealing with keen cooks. I notice they've got a shortwave radio here in the kitchen. So they're obviously quite well tuned into international affairs. And there are skiing photographs around as well. So that blends travel and adventure pretty nicely. This conservatory is immensely useful. The washing machine lives here. It's a dining room, and it's also a music room because this is a musical family. They've got a piano, someone around here plays flute. They're rather keen on their music. After all, they've got a metronome. Now, someone in the family is endowed with green fingers. Look at these plants. They're immaculate. I wish I was good at naming them as they are at looking after them. There's more signs of the scholarly nature of this family as well. Bookcase full of interesting things, showing us again a deep interest in history and in travel. Let's look at the evidence. The table from Damascus. The adventurous reading, the shortwave listening. Who'd live in a house like this? David, it's over to you.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Lloyd. And now for our home and studio audience, here's whose house it is. Lorraine.
I've got the feeling that if they obviously have got children, but they're not small children because all the living room was creams and very plush, and I don't think one would do that with youngsters. Is he a newsreader?
No,
Obviously
he isn't.
not.
No, he certainly is not a newsreader, no. He's been in the news, but he's not a newsreader.
Oh.
Paul.
I would have thought first a newsreader, so if we're saying no to that one, is it somebody who was somehow involved in politics and wandered into controversy or had some kind of brush with the news people?
He was not involved in politics, but he certainly had a brush with somebody. He was involved in controversy in one of the places we're talking about.
Can I do
And you've said more of the Middle East, and so we'll say yes, it's somewhere in the Middle East.
Before we
Now,
get-
where was he drawing attention to, Lloyd, in the...
all around the Middle East, Syria, around there, Lebanon, sort
Iraq,
of Iraq.
that part.
Obviously not John McCarthy, because that was John McCarthy's book.
You're getting into the right area.
So would it have been somebody who was taken hostage?
It's not Terry Waite, because
No.
it would be, but there was a...
You're right. You're right in saying Iraq. Now, there's
Yeah.
not many people, and indeed, I don't know whether you've got very close there. Whether you could name the name, I don't know.
Ah.
He was described at the time as the, quote, forgotten hostage, and so if you've forgotten his name, that's understandable, because he was even called the forgotten hostage by his wife then while trying to get him out.
And she became almost as famous as he did for trying to get
yes,
him out.
Yes.
Um,
So it's very difficult.
It's not
Ian,
Sunny Man's
Ian.
husband.
Ian.
Yes, Sunny Mac. That's
Well
right.
done, Ian. Now, watch this close-up on this face. Can you pluck? Ian, you're right with Ian. Well, you've done very well.
Richter.
Yes! Fantastic! Oh, that was superb. Ian and Shirley Richter, will you come through the keyhole? Now, we welcome you both, and you're both famous for having come through this, because Shirley's campaign was just stunning through all this. Was this house we saw, by the way, the house which you were in before you went to Iraq, or not?
No, it wasn't.
This is later.
It's 2 streets away.
2 streets away. Well, if you don't want to travel too far, you've done enough travelling. That's right. But now, the crisis began on what, June the 17th, 1986, wasn't it?
Seems a long time ago, no?
It does, yes. And it lasted for 5 years, and so it's now more than 5 years since it happened, as it were. And how did you learn about it, Shirley? That Ian had been
well, he was
arrested?
He was on a routine flight, business flight from Baghdad to Frankfurt, and I was alerted because although his baggage was on the plane, he didn't actually get onto the plane because he was arrested at the airport. And he was travelling with fellow travellers who realised he wasn't on the plane.
And how long was it between, we'll come to it in a minute, how long was it between your detention and the pathetic 45-minute trial?
Oh, it was about a year, 14 months.
And so during that time you had no idea what lay in store at all?
Absolutely not.
And was that the worst part, or was the worst part that you were mistreated?
I think the worst part was the first 60 days. Just there was intensive interrogation early on, and then after that everything stopped. And funny enough, when you interrogate, at least you have contact with people. But if you're in a black cell and you don't know if it's night or day, it's a bit difficult.
The trial lasted, this whole trial lasted for 45 minutes, didn't it, according to
There were 60 of us.
60 people tried.
Processed in 45 minutes, which was quite efficient. 10 death sentences.
10 death sentences.
3 life imprisonments, of which I was one, although I didn't understand the language at the time. And several 20 years and 15-year sentences, and 1 statutory release.
Right, I see. So 45 seconds each then, basically,
pretty
for your
good.
different cases and so on. So it wasn't exactly what we would call due process of law then.
A little different.
And you made, how many trips did you make to Iraq?
50.
Did you ever wonder why, since they'd, that's fantastic, because also the various times there were no diplomatic relations and so on, weren't there?
Yeah.
Did you ever sometimes think, since they'd at random they'd taken Ian, that they might at random take you too and
Well, there
give you a
was-
reunion you didn't really want?
That was a real possibility, because they did actually detain me at one stage under house arrest for 2 months. But one of the reasons why I didn't want to speak to the press was because I was going into Iraq, and if I could be put into life imprisonment just for speaking out against Saddam Hussein. So it was a very difficult situation, given that I was going into the country.
And it all went on for 5 years. And how did you get the news that the ordeal was over and that it wasn't going to be life imprisonment?
Well, I'd had several high points and hopes, and they'd been dashed, so you sort of learnt not to live too expectantly. So I was pretty fed up at this stage, and I went to the prison governor, and as my star had risen at this stage, I said to him, "Don't stop me. I'm going to run around this prison field 50 times. Don't even think of stopping me." He said, "Mister, just go, go." I came back, had a shower, which was a bucket and a ladle, and just put some clothes on when the Iraqi security police arrived and said, "Mister, you've got 5 minutes to go." I said, "Beg your pardon, I've been your guest for 6 years. I need a little longer to pack and go." He said, "No, mister, Saddam wants a press conference. You must go now." And so in 5 minutes, I was literally bundled out, and sadly lost a lot of lovely letters from Mother Teresa, Cardinal Hume, and various other people. But it was extraordinary, because I went from there to a private house, and I thought, oh golly, I'm moving from the fat into the frying pan, thinking I was going into a Beirut situation. But another car came by shortly after that, and I saw the press cameras and television. I knew that was right. I was free.
Does it all seem a long way away?
Seems years ago.
Well, it was years ago, I suppose. That's part of it. But it's a joy to talk to you. I think the way you came to, everyone was stunned, weren't they? The way you could take accountancy exams within 3 or 4 weeks, wasn't it?
2 weeks, I think, in Leeds, funny
Were you
enough.
in Leeds? Here in Leeds. This is where it all happens, isn't it? Is it? Yes, good. Glad we got that clear. Thank you both very much. We're so delighted that the whole experience didn't leave any scars, psychological or any other sort of. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
Thanks and our respect to Ian and Shirley Richter. And of course, to Jim Bowen. Not to mention Nina. Not to mention Paul. And not to mention Lorraine. Until the next time, goodbye for now.
Autistic children and their special needs feature in Esther with Kay Adams next on BBC Two.
Do you want glass brick walls? Fancy an alternative coffee table? Or even need a whole house makeover? Well, Homefront is back to show you how.
Fresh ideas for your home that won't break the bank.
A new series of Homefront, tomorrow 8:30
On BBC Two.
If your family is always the last to know about the latest health issues, there's an easy way to make sure you never miss the programmes that interest you. BBC Alert, a unique service that lets you know what's on and when, even at times you wouldn't expect. Just call this number and you'll receive a weekly postcard or email with details of all the health programmes on BBC TV and radio, as well as events in your region. Call this number now and be part of your no-hassle guide to the things that interest you. BBC Alert.
Headlines from the past, today's the day in 35 minutes on BBC Two, after Esther with Kay Adams.